if you're in the middle of a negotiation, don't mention it to neighbors, don't mention it to family members, because at the end of the day, I feel like they can sway
100%.
that decision, or they may know somebody was also wanting to put an offer on that house. And I would say it may damage that or interrupt that negotiation.
Welcome back to In the House podcast, everyone. My name's Toni Singh.
Good morning, and I'm Jenny Woon.
Our topic today.
Yes, we're going to go into the critical elements of what to include in a Schedule A of your listing and buyer's agreement. You know, that blank, empty page. We're wondering, what do you put in there? Well, clearly, there's a reason for that. And you want to make sure that you want to prevent any misunderstandings between you and your client. You know, that the contract to purchase and sale and the buyer's exclusive agreement are already pre-written. And it's well written, but sometimes there's certain things that you want to include to make it a little bit more of to foster some productive and transparent communication and relationships between you and your client.
For sure. So
So let's talk about first, maybe the listing agreement. So what we call the multiple listing agreement is what we sign in Vancouver, in BC. So a couple of things that I want to include, and these are my notes that if you want to add, it'll be awesome.
Sure.
The marketing and advertising plan.
Yeah.
It's not very clear in the agreement, but I believe, which I've included in mine, are specific strategies and channels that you'll be using. And that also includes maybe the frequency, how much you're going to be spending, the types of advertisements. And to be more specific, if you're doing online listings, what websites are they going to be on? If you're doing open houses, how frequent and what times the open houses will be? If you're doing print ads, which newspaper media will it be in?
Those are all great points, Jenny. So do you include, for your marketing and advertising plan, that's just the overall heading, right? You're including all digital, all printed, like basically any methods of that in that one section?
Yes. So in that marketing section, it'll break down traditional or conventional, and then new, like digital. It would also include like my newsletters that go out and my e-blasts that go out as well. And they're actually even added into that database.
Yes.
So they'll be receiving it when it's blasted out.
Yeah, it's great for them to be able to see that and have confidence in the team. Another important section, which we include as well, are having to do with client responsibilities. So I've noticed actually most agents do not include a section like this in their listings. Why would it be important to do this? And what are some examples that these agents can add to their own Schedule A's?
Well, I do want to mention there is a small section that's pre-written already in the agreement, referring to the client having to be communicative if something changes, but it doesn't really say, well, who's preparing the home for showings? Are you going to supply me with an extra set of keys? What are some extra documentation like survey lots, copies of permits, copies of receipts? Maybe you've recently gotten your furnace maintained, right? Those type of documentation receipts are really, really helpful to facilitate the transaction.
Absolutely.
Cleaning, often it's a subjective topic because cleaning to me sometimes doesn't mean it's the cleanest.
Everyone has different standards of cleanliness, for sure.
So who's going to pay for the cleaning? And say, for example, if you don't want anything on the counter during showings and nothing in the sink, I would say put that into the agreement, into Schedule A.
It's definitely good because clients forget these things when you're walking through the home, right? You're talking about so many different things that they're responsible for. So definitely a good idea to have it in the fine print.
I also even would include repairs. So if there's a if you want, there's little dings and things that you should fix, like replacing light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to also make any assumptions that the client thinks that you're going to be fixing those items.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I want to mention as well is expectations on like removing jewelry, knowing that there's going to be people walking through the home. And when you're holding open houses, you may not necessarily be able to watch every single person
Mm-hmm.
because there could be multiple groups that come in at the same time. So if you're worried about your personal belongings, ensure that you have proper insurance coverage.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of lawsuits happening where people are coming through the public for an open house and the client didn't have appropriate insurance, liability insurance, right? So I think that's often, we think it's a very normal thing for people to purchase,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some irresponsible owners.
Yeah, it's true. I think especially some of the older population, insurance wasn't as big of a thing back then necessarily. So that mentality often comes into play where they're like, why would I need insurance?
And I don't want to mention any brokerage, but there was one showing where someone slipped and fell.
Oh, yeah.
It was raining.
Yeah.
And that
Brutal.
buyer ended up suing the agent who had the listing and also suing the buyer's agent, their own realtor as well.
See, but I also think that I won't give my input. I think it's crazy. What about communication? I mean, communication with our clients is one of the most important things, is it not?
It absolutely is. It's the make or break because people can make assumptions and right away, if you want to get a response from your client, first of all, establish the type of method of communication that they like to use. Are they an email person? Are they more of a talker on the phone? Are they more of a texter? Now, even establish the expectation of right after the showing, how soon do you want the feedback to be received about that property?
100%.
Right? So after you're with your client, you leave them for the day, you leave them for a few hours, you text them, hey, so-and-so, what did you think of the properties that we just looked at today? I would put it into the communication protocol into Schedule A that you expect a response back on the feedback of the houses and the condos, simply for the fact that you can also get back to that listing agent about whether or not there's going to be an offer in hand.
Yeah, I actually want to just tell one quick story in relation to communication protocols, because a lot of the younger agents, we're very used to just texting, right? Some of the newer agents, it's difficult to get them on the phone, and sometimes it's more efficient to have a conversation rather than just texting. A lot of our older clients, like I just took a listing yesterday, they're elderly. If I would have assumed that they like text message, they would never get the text messages nor respond to me, right? So that population often, not all the time, prefers telephone calls, and it could even be the house phone versus a mobile phone.
Right. And if they're not used to digital signatures, any software like that, and you are so used to using it, there could be some miscommunication where maybe they were expecting for you to go over
in person.
person. So establish that type of communication protocol in advance. I also forgot to mention about driving around.
Yeah.
When there's babies or kids at showings, you may want to also mention that you may not necessarily want to have the kids being in your own car because you need adequate insurance or maybe even like a car seat that's in your car. So I would say if you're not comfortable having clients in your car, to actually put that into your contract as well, is that you're going to be meeting at the showing in separate times.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. What about agent availability? I mean, people think that agents work 24/7. A lot of us used to. Some still do.
Okay, so I love this, and I should probably put this into my a Schedule A. Are my working hours? So I actually don't have boundaries on that, but I suggest that you do start that, no matter where you are in your business, making it from perhaps 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. and not taking any calls past 9 p.m., for example, 8 p.m., whatever it is, 5 p.m., maybe even like set hours during during dinner, you're not going to pick up the phone unless there's an active offer happening. Okay. And so I think for the most part, I believe that most buyers will have and sellers will have an understanding that you're going to be unavailable at certain times, as long as you are proactive in letting them know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points.
And if there is something that's urgent, that there's a backup contact in case.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, confidentiality and privacy. I would say that you are sometimes in this sensitive moment of handling information that's super confidential and private. If you're in the middle of a negotiation, don't mention it to neighbors, don't mention it to family members, because at the end of the day, I feel like they can sway
100%.
that decision, or they may know somebody was also wanting to put an offer on that house. And I would say it may damage that or interrupt that negotiation. Okay, so I just want to mention that there's also a Schedule A in the buyer's exclusive agency agreement. This is the agreement that we talked about just a few episodes back, and not too long ago, to talk about the relationship you want to establish with you and the buyer. So first of all, in the Schedule A, mention your communication protocol. So no different than the listing agreement, you want to mention your preferred method of communication. So are you using email? Are you using phone? Are you going to be meeting in person? What your response times expectations are for each other, and providing the feedback that is quantifiable and qualifiable about the properties that you had viewed. And I think this allows the buyer's agent to do a better job in fast tracking and finding the right home for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then secondly is your availability. You want to also establish your working hours. So again, no different. You're available between 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. all the way up to until 5 p.m. or 8 p.m., whatever it is. Establishing that these are the times that you're going to be reachable and the times that are your personal times. And I don't think there's anything wrong with establishing that, as long as there's some communication if there's a pending offer happening.
Yeah, that's an important expectation to set.
Yeah. And then the confidentiality and privacy. Why is that important?
I mean, that's the talk of the days, isn't it? You don't want to have to you don't want to give any information away about your buyer's position or motivation, because you can lose leverage in an offer situation. And handling the agreement on how you're going to handle that sensitive information is really, really important. So it's important for a client to know what information you can and will share versus what you are not going to be sharing with other parties. It just makes them feel really secure in that agency relationship.
Mm-hmm. And then showing expectations. So when you're walking through the home, first of all, probably not giving too much verbal and nonverbal cues about what you think of the property.
Why is that though now, Jenny, especially? It's more important than ever.
Yeah, I feel like you want to remain neutral during those showings, simply for the fact that you don't want to give any confidentiality, like confidential or sensitive information away. Us being in a culture where we're very open-minded and there's a lot of cultural differences in some of the way like we live, and especially in the way what we practice in our homes. It's just, we want to be able to respect that person's home because that's their most cherished home, that they've made memories in there. And if you're saying anything negative about it, that's just your personal like thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't like it, then that's fine. It's not the right home for you.
Also, a lot of the times these days, and we talked about this on another episode, there's a lot of Nest cameras around the houses, both exterior and interior. And you never know. I mean, if you're walking through a home with your buyer and they're saying things within the home, it is possible that the seller could hear what you're saying, and it also might give away their bottom line, right? Or something important about their situation that would play a role in negotiations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And punctuality.
Yes.
I think you do have to mention that it is everybody's responsibility to be punctual at the showings, because as you may be aware, there's sometimes you're booking appointments back to back, 5, 6, and when one is off, the timing,
Everything's thrown off.
is thrown off. So again, being punctual, just establishing respect to the other party who's showing the property, ensuring that you have adequate insurance as well when you're listing the property. Detailed commission structure is the last thing that I want to mention about putting this into the Schedule A. So there's a spot on there that explains the expectation of remuneration of what you're going to be getting when you have a successful completion. And sometimes there's going to be properties where it could be a private sale. It could be a private deal, or maybe you're writing a deal where they already knew each other, and all you're really doing is facilitating the contract part of it, and they've already figured out the price.
Yep.
But I would establish how commission is being paid. I would never use the words, "Oh, the seller pays for it," because there could be so many times.
Or if it's like a 1% house or something.
Yeah, and you want to be able to negotiate your get the amount that you deserve.
Yeah.
Right. So there are so many different reasons as to why it's really important to establish like a minimum standard of what your commission is. And in case there's any additional fees or costs that you want to charge, like it could be additional documents that you need to order for your buyer, that is something that maybe you need to establish upfront who's going to pay for that. For example, there's the Eli report. That's the condo
condo clear.
Condo clear. They also, and inspections. Who's going to pay for those? It certainly wouldn't be you if you actually put it into the Schedule A. I want to talk one thing: staging.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you do with staging for your sellers?
Honestly, I know that there's a lot of great services out there. Some realtors will offer to stage it themselves. We don't do that. Our requirement is that if we feel the property needs staging, we'll work with the seller and get an agreement in advance that we'll have people through for quotes, and the seller will be paying the fee for staging. Because honestly, this is the other thing too. I can appreciate a good design. I am really great at sales. So I prefer to hire a professional designer for something like that, because they're going to be able to help the client far better than me. I mean, I can recommend some things, but I'm not a professional designer. What do you think about that? Do you guys do something similar, or do you stage it for them?
I've been including virtual staging because cost effective. Yeah, but that is part of the marketing plan. I think it really depends on the property. It depends on days on market. For the most part, our sellers are paying it for it. There could be some form of negotiation. So in the Schedule A, I may say I'm going to put in the first $500, or I may even put in I will take care of the removal of it. Yeah, so
we've done that before too.
Yeah, so maybe just the setup for it and the removal for it. But then if it's a monthly cost, then the sellers are responsible for that. And another thing I want to mention is gifts.
Oh, yeah.
So if they're expecting gifts, or perhaps something that you're going to be covering, let's just say a referral or legal fees, make sure you get that into the Schedule A as well.
And actually, one thing that I did forget to mention when we were talking about the listing Schedule A, so I'll just mention it now, is, there's a lot of money that can go into marketing property properly, Jenny, as you know, better than others even, because you guys go over and above for that. And it's pretty common in pre-sale. But we have a clause in our Schedule A for listings that states that in the event the listing is canceled by the sellers earlier than the expiry of the contract, that we are reimbursed for our upfront marketing fees. And I actually find that I just love that clause. And it's not, I know we've never had to enforce it actually, but on the listing presentation, it really helps drawing a seller's attention there, because the unmotivated people who are just trying to test the market, they won't list it with you. And so you just get it out of the way right away. And, again, if you've got 10 listings and it costs around $2,000 to market every listing, that's a lot of money spent.
And thanks for bringing that, because that's the reason why I put together this topic.
Oh, that's okay.
So I'm going to add this clause to what you said. In the event seller decides to remove the property referenced in this agreement off the market during the term of this agreement, any photos, video, marketing costs for the home incurred for the home shall be refunded by the seller to the listing agent, unless it's extended for this agreement. So invoices to be provided should the seller elect to refund the listing agent, invoice to be provided should and the seller to refund the listing agent for photos, videos, and marketing cost.
And strata document orders would be included in the marketing costs?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So as we wrap up today's episode, we hope that you found this topic on the essential elements to include a Schedule A super important and insightful for your practice. By clearly defining all these key components, being a real estate agent and working with your client can be so much more enjoyable and successful and smoother. And there's no wondering and assumptions. So again, remember to have effective communication, define your responsibilities, have a mutual understanding of the cornerstones of your availability and your communication. And I would absolutely say that if you found this topic really useful, please share it with your friends and peers. As we dive into these type of topics, we want to make sure that we're offering practical tips that are insightful for you so that you can do a better job and be more successful and have more deals with your clients. Thanks for listening.